It's Gideon Haigh from the Australian over here.
And it's Peter Lalor from the Australian over here. Still, the day after. Yeah.
And the day after. And isn't that one of the great things about Test match cricket is that you can keep talking about it almost indefinitely, whether it's next week or next month or next year or 20 years down the track. This is going to be one of those Test series that we just go on talking about. It is a benchmark in Australia-India competition. Amazing enough that India won here in 2018-19, but this is a better performance with a richer narrative and an amazing competition that it's actually a tribute to the players on both sides.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. It's so hard to decompress after experiencing something like that. Last night it was hard to sleep, and when I did half sleep, it would be cricket. I even woke up thinking I was having a conversation with Ravi Shastri, but he was on the BBC talking to me in my ear. Very strange. Where this series sits in the sort of history of great cricket clashes is very interesting, isn't it? I mean, we always talk about that 2005 Ashes, how that England team ambushed Australia, but they ambushed them at home and they ambushed them when they were full strength. It was a coming together of a really powerful bowling and very, very good batting side against. But this one, it's still. How's anyone ever going to explain how India beat Australia in this series? That's the thing that makes you scratch your head. Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, one of the reasons why I think the narrative of this series is so compelling is because it happened in the order that it did. For India to be trounced so heavily in Adelaide, bowled out for 36, was extraordinary in and of itself. For India then to bounce back and win the next Test match, I can't think of an example of a team beaten as badly in the first Test match that's come back so conclusively in the second Test match. Then for the third Test match to be played as a draw and to remind us just how compelling a draw can be, how, when every ball is counting and every moment ticking away is changing the scenario of the match. That's an extraordinary reminder of what's special about Test cricket. And then for all four results to be possible to the very end of yesterday, for India to take the series into the last hour of the last day of the last Test, it was just the perfect climax. Everything happened in this series, and everything happened in the right order.
Yeah. They don't do the DVD box sets anymore, do they, Gideon?
They don't.
You'd want this one. You definitely want this one.
And I know that people yesterday were saying, "Oh, what a shame that we don't have a fifth Test." But in a way, we didn't need it. There was so much packed into the four Test matches that you got almost 5 Test matches worth of cricket, and it ended on such a fantastic, conclusive, and emphatic note that adding another Test match for exhausted players who'd obviously played their best cricket would have been asking too much. And also, I mean, it's just so damn much cricket to fit into the calendar these days. Short of adding an extra month to the calendar, war over or something like that. You're just not going to be able to get another Test match in without disrupting the rest of the cricket calendar. And, part of the compelling nature of the series was the fact that it was so close together. We've gone from December 17 to January the 19th, 4 Test matches with nothing in between, except for the laboriousness of the transit due to quarantine. It really just should have been too tough for both sides, but it wasn't. They were still toe-to-toe at the end of it.
It would be cruel and unusual punishment to subject India to a fifth Test, I think.
Yeah.
You better hope that the next Ashes isn't played under these sort of COVID quarantine conditions, because 5 Tests would be too many, I reckon.
It would. And, I mean, parquet James Warburton, but how much would it stink now if we had the ODIs and the T20s to play, after the Lord Mayor's show? Most of the good players would be rested. They'd be completely exhausted. India would probably be able to call up, a fifth 11 and do pretty well, but it would feel very anticlimactic.
No, I suppose James's point on that was it was bad for business, but we've all agreed all along that limited format series or limited over series at the end of a great test match series, they're always an afterthought, aren't they? Nobody really pays any attention to them at all. Wasn't it fantastic? I mean, it was great to see Seven kick the furniture back and delay their news to broadcast that last night. Great call.
Yes.
You know, and how often does the furniture get kicked back like that to watch another side win? But not that they would have known that at the time, but it was looking pretty likely. I mean, I'd already started to write actually, that's not true. I'd started to write the India draw early in the last session because you have to start fiddling with something. Yes. But, the tone of that changed pretty quickly.
Yes, here we are giving away all our trade secrets. But when a series goes that deep into a day, you are sort of thinking about, well, how am I going to make sense of this? And everything gains a context from the final result, doesn't it? You know, everything kind of inflects what you've previously seen before. You know, you get a sense of the significance of a dropped catch or a missed edge or a captaincy call. But you really do write 3 or 4 different pieces in your mind and eventually file the one that seems closest to the reality that you've just witnessed.
Yeah. Well, I've always found, particularly with the match reports and things, the key is to hold your nerve and play the ball as late as possible. Do not, because anything you write early, you're more of a dataist in that, aren't you? You can sort of cut and paste little bits that you've written. I've watched you do that.
I do cut and paste. Yeah.
Whereas I tend to have to start at the top and work to the bottom.
Yeah, you're Cheteshwar Pujara. You play really late, right under the eye.
But and having said that, like that series finished. Well, that game that went deep last night. I mean, I love a test that ends about lunchtime because then we can do press conferences, suck it all up, cover the test match, cover the series. But that one finished at 7, and it was a great effort by the newspaper to pull all of that together. You all over the front page, and we've got cricket all over the back page, except a little bit of that tennis has seeped into the carpet down the bottom. Not happy about that. And then just having a quick look now, all over the inside back page too. So all of that is put together very, very late. I'd say that almost all of those stories are written after stumps, after 7, and got into the paper. So well done to everybody back in the office.
And we potted, Pete, and we potted.
And then we potted. And then I had a cold dinner at 8:30. And to decompress, I started series 5 of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Excellent.
Just falling asleep. And actually, Ravi did ring just as I was falling asleep. It was a shame we weren't in Brisbane. I would have been good to go out and just have a drink with a great man and touch the excitement. But he was very emotional. He said, the best thing I missed his press conference, but he said it's the greatest thing he's ever been involved with in cricket. I think as a coach, sometimes these things mean more to you than they do when you're a player.
Yeah, sure.
But, I haven't heard Ravi like that before. And
that was the only downside yesterday, wasn't it? The fact that we weren't there, and we've made no effort to hide it. We're doing it from our respective studies.
Bunkers.
It would have been fantastic to be there. I mean, it is amazing the view that you can get from the ceaseless surveillance of the cameras. I did think the scenes of the Indian bench towards the end were very moving. And sort of almost sort of quite revealing of character to see how calm Rahane was throughout, how excited the young players were around him, how Rahane didn't sit in the centre. He sat to kind of one side. This isn't – he really does place the team at the centre of his thoughts. He's allowed all those players to participate in the triumph. He hasn't kind of seized it for himself, and nor is Shastri, to his great credit. And, I must admit, I had a tear in my eye yesterday as I watched Mohammad Siraj, considering that the tour that he's had and the emergence that he's enjoyed and the experience of taking the first test 5 for one day and winning a Border Gavaskar trophy the next day. You do, as far away as you are, you can't help but, put yourself in the minds and the positions of the various players.
Yeah, I'm just soaking up now that photograph on the back page of the Australian of Rishabh Pant with his sort of hand on his heart, walking off his
Yes,
eyes
yeah.
closed. It's fantastic photo. Really, really good photo. What an innings from that guy. I mean, there's a lot of Indian careers will have been defined by this. A lot of young men have played some extraordinary cricket.
Well, he's a bloody difficult man to captain against, Pant, because he can take the game away from you so quickly, can't he? He can make you look a fool. But as you push your fielders back into defensive positions, balls fall into gaps. You miss the opportunity to get him out. He played a couple of completely scatterbrained shots towards the end because it was just so high on adrenaline, the ball kind of skewing off the edge and dropping into space. And, for a more orthodox player, those catches would have been caught. But he had so diffused Australians' resources at that point. They were so confused about how to approach it. He made his own luck and then he benefited from it.
Yeah, well, and he finishes with an average of 68.5, obviously assisted by that not out. But it's interesting just to look at the numbers and just having a look now at the Indian batting averages through the series. And
have we got stats, Pete? Have you got stats?
Well, I've just Googled them, Gideon. But they've won this series on the back of a single century.
Yeah.
One batsman. Ajinkya Rahani's century was the only century from the Indian batsman, but some very even contributions.
Yes.
From Pant, from Shubman Gill. I mean, 21 years old.
Yeah.
Made his debut here. Finishes with an average of 51 in his first series against a very, very good bowling lineup in their own country. I mean, this is a guy who won't have had a lot of overseas experience, but that's a great effort, 2 half centuries. Washington Sundar, well, so he didn't make a lot of runs, but he made them when they counted. That 60 was fantastic. And he's another young man who just arrived fully formed into cricket.
Yep. No, I mean, having not had, you say that they haven't had a lot of overseas experience, but they have had a lot of big match experience, haven't they? I mean, I think more than one commentator referred yesterday to the fact that a lot of these players have been in the clinches in key moments in IPL games, which couldn't get much more intense than a Test match, and they've come through the other side. So India does have a way of initiating players in the need to win clutch moments, and all the Indian players came through. They're mature beyond their years in a cricket sense because they have played T20 domestic tournament, in basically the biggest cricket market in the world.
Well, that's a very good point, and I suppose, I mean, would teams in previous eras have been able to chase that down on the last day, the way India did?
I'm not sure that the captain would have allowed them to. I'm not sure the captain would have encouraged them to. I mean, just huge credit to Rahane to just, he set such a great example for his players. He's an incredibly unselfish player. He came in yesterday and played a crucial cameo, 24 off 22 balls. But just the message that it said, the error is forgivable, but, we are dead set on winning this Test match. It sent such a powerful message to the rest of his team that he was prepared to go out and do it himself, put his wicket on the line, and risk failure. And I think a lot of players took inspiration from that.
Yeah. And, well, what more can be said about their bowling lineup? I suppose if we were to run through their bowling lineup, we'd be here for 3 hours because they've had so many through the series. But Mohammad Siraj, for me, he was right up there. He was almost my man of the series. You want another stat, Gideon? Hang on a minute. What's he got? Here's Siraj. How many wickets did he get? Sorry.
No, he got 13 at 29.
Oh, you beat me to it. That's my thing. Leading wicket taker for the Indians.
Yeah. But look, I mean, he's terrific, got great pace, relentlessly competitive. They were extremely disciplined, the Indian bowlers, and they set about getting the Australians out, not simply containing them. I think the key stat, or the most fascinating stat from the series, is the sheer number of Indian players.
Yeah,
to go 20 players in a 4-test series, well, A, you haven't had a lot of luck, but B, in a test series where the test matches are so close together and the cricket is so intense, maybe it was an advantage for India to have players, kind of fresh legs and fresh minds, constantly coming into their test team, as distinct from Australia, who stuck with the same attacking formation right the way through. It certainly tested India's depth of cricket, but it did pose Australia constant problems because they were facing different opponents every day, for which they didn't really necessarily have a plan or a different plan. So they kind of defaulted to a similar plan for everyone. I mean, where do you bowl to Washington Sundar? You haven't seen very much of him. You've probably seen him in the IPL, but that's a different kind of cricket. So you go, look, short into the body, like we do with everybody else. So what happens when he hooks you for 6? Okay, where do I bowl next? The Australians did not seem particularly flexible in the way in which they went about their work, which was really what was required of them, considering that the constant new challenges that the Indian selections were putting before them.
Is their 21-year-olds are better than our 21-year-olds, mate?
Sure as hell are. My God, I mean,
yeah, and that's a worry. The 19s Indian teams were always a street ahead of everybody else, weren't they? But then they came back to the pack as they went up to the next level. But they really are starting to. Australia casts about, and there's not a lot there to renew that team when needed. But India just seemed to have somebody on hand wherever they looked.
Well, I guess you can
that bloke over there in the nets. He looks all right.
Well, I guess you can just make the demographic argument is that 1.3 billion people versus 25 million, 30 first-class sides versus 6 is just going to produce a greater bevy of good cricketers. But that didn't seem to count when England had 18 counties and a full-time professional system. We used to beat the pants off them all the way through the 90s and the noughties. We used to say, oh well, we've got quality players, they've got quantity. Well, India's managed to create the best of both worlds, haven't they? I think that's partly because they've continued to take 4-day cricket seriously. The IPL takes place at the end of the Indian summer rather than in the middle, crowding out first-class cricket. You have to have performed at Ranji Trophy level to make an advance. I mean, a guy like Hanuma Vihari doesn't look like the classiest player out there, but he's just made it through to the Test team by sheer bloody weight of runs. There's still a respect for that in India. We seem to, whether it's by action or design, we seem to go more on potential, maybe because we have to.
Well, as we've said in the past, you do not get handed opportunity in India, but their system, I mean, we refer to the Ranji Trophy and having to have all that first class, but I mean, that part of their system was always there, but was never exploited properly. I think that the introduction of the IPL and talent scouts and exposing people to critical moments has done what we've talked about for 20 years. If India ever harnessed their talent, they'd be untouchable.
Yep.
Well, I'm wondering if we're starting to see the reality of that now.
Oh, definitely. That
the Indian B, remember when people you say, oh, Australia A could beat most sides in the world. Well, India B could beat most sides in the world.
And that is something that India's been doing quite zealously over the last few years, isn't it? That India A team has been very active. So a lot of these players, your Sirajas and your Takurs have been given the opportunity to play against, good class international opposition under different conditions, which has prepared them for the rigours of Test cricket. I mean, they're a juggernaut. It's very impressive, and thank heavens that for various reasons they continue to take Test cricket seriously. Good news for Test cricket yesterday: the huge viewing audience watching India triumph in a foreign country with a team full of young, expressive, exciting young cricketers. What an absolute fillip for Test cricket in India, happening at this time of year. Kind of at the end of a bleak year in which there hasn't been very much cricket to watch. Just fantastic experience all round.
Beautifully said.